Grant and Schwartz did a piece of work where they went in search of pieces of research that show this inverted U shape, the Goldilocks principle, whether porridge is either too cold, just right, or too hot. And I've got to say thank you to Hugh here, because he's taken the metaphor of the Goldilocks principle and given me some chairs to practice with. So you'll have to work out whether these chairs are comfy or not. What Grant and Schwartz found was that there is evidence that actually you can have too much conscientiousness in an organization. And from a psychology perspective, this is interesting because conscientiousness is often correlated with performance in organizations. It's one of the things that you will see in competency frameworks. You will see values frameworks, things to do with being conscientious, holding responsibility, being responsible, delivering on our promises. But there is a point at which conscientiousness tips over and performance stops rising and starts to fall. And it's understandable because it indicates that somebody is being super checking because they're super anxious. And so what you get is this situation where people of anxiety and people through over checking, they're not producing as much output, as much outcome. So conscientiousness is generally a good thing, but overdone can be an unhelpful thing. Experience is quite interesting in that beyond a certain point, experience adds no extra value. So when we think about some job adverts where it says you need a gazillions of years worth of experience to apply for this job, it's entirely unreasonable because often beyond 3 to 5 years experience, people are actually going through the same cycle of things again. They're not really adding to their experience necessarily. And actually there is a point at which experience sort of isn't adding so much more value. So there is some work to suggest that experience beyond a certain point doesn't add to performance. Empathy. There's been work to do around sort of how empathy affects well-being and performance, and being empathetic in organizations, again, something we often try to encourage. You know, we deal with emotional intelligence, we try to get people to think about their empathy, but actually it can have a detrimental effect in terms of well-being. And so this might relate a little bit, Victor, to what you talk about in kindness, overextended, going too far, and then it actually having a detrimental effect on somebody themselves. Learning orientation is quite interesting in that there was a piece of work done to show that people who are highly focused on learning, and this might go back to the point that was raised there about training originally, is that if they spend so much time on it, they don't actually deliver performance. So that point that was raised by that group, absolutely, there is some science behind that to say that can be the case. And experimentation, interestingly, Sarah, was also found here in that high levels of experimentation actually degrade performance of an organization overall. So there probably is a sweet spot, regardless of what Amy Edmondson says on that one. Creativity, similarly, generosity, similar to empathy. Giving people too much choice can be detrimental, and that has been found not just in organizations but in other sort of commercial consumer psychology. Too much choice actually leads to some poor decision making sometimes. Interestingly, self-esteem, this is almost like an overused strength. Self-esteem can become used to an extent where somebody becomes overly confident, and that has an effect on performance. Issues of team composition, if there isn't enough diversity in teams, there is some evidence that actually that degrades performance. So team cohesiveness can, if it's too similar, has an inverted U relationship. Job complexity takes us all the way back to the Yerkes-Dodson model. Interestingly, happiness. Happiness has an effect on a series of things, which is If we listen to much of the social media content, it would suggest that the happier people are, then the actual more satisfied they are with their lives, and the more productive they are, and the more successful they are, and generally the greater income they end up with. But actually, that's not the entirety of the story. There is an inverted U happening in that people who are exceptionally happy engage in riskier behaviours, often leading to detrimental health outcomes. And also, interestingly, satisfaction and happiness leading to lower incomes because people aren't trying as hard to sort of get somewhere. That sort of that little bit of ambition gets lost. We can have too much autonomy, and that can affect performance. So getting autonomy right, again, is an interesting one. Persistence and courage, we encourage persistence and courage, but you've got to know when to stop, when to let go, because again, persistence and courage has a negative effect on performance if taken too far. In terms of the Charing Cross police station thing, commitment and loyalty can go too far. What has been demonstrated is that commitment and loyalty can end up leading to organisational integrity issues. And this was within a study, not within that particular instance. So my kind of little thought that I had off of the back of the Casey review was supported by this when I kind of went in search of understanding really as to why might people who are together, bound together, got strong belongingness together, that why might that go too far? Some of the people on here who might be familiar with sort of sporting psychology and high performance, practice effects can actually have a detrimental effect, because practice, when it is not actually adding to improvement, then adds to anxiety and actually degrades performance. So we can over practice. Self-efficacy, kind of that overconfidence. Conflict, interestingly, again, back to psychological safety, we need enough conflict, but not so much conflict that it starts to then have an impact on performance. Assertiveness, again, has been found in leadership to have an inverted U relationship. We need enough assertiveness, but too much. And myself and Hugh were having just a really interesting little chat there about kind of when things go too far. It might be when it's in service of the individual's need rather than in service of what you were trying to achieve, like organizational performance or well-being or integrity. The idea of being overly optimistic is fairly common in discourse and organization, but we can also have too much openness as well, which might link back to things like honesty as well. That can actually lead to performance difficulties.